All right, this is Ken the Metal Professor one more time with a short series of videos about learning how to use RadioBoss. This is number 3 in what is so far a set of 3, but if I have to learn more stuff, maybe it'll go to 4. If you've watched the first 2, as a reminder, I'm not a RadioBoss expert. I've not used it at all before very recently when I needed to learn it so that the nonprofit radio station that I do a show on, WVLP in Valparaiso, Indiana, 103.1 FM, WVLP.org. Our previous automated software for the station is about to go kaput at any time, and so we have to have RadioBoss ready to go. And so I'm learning how to do what we need to do, and I'm sort of documenting what I'm learning. I'm not promising that this is actually the super best way to get stuff done. It's just how I'm learning how to get stuff done, and then maybe other people that are smarter can suggest better ways to do this. But just as a reminder / catch up on the first 2 videos, the programming paradigm we need is that we need to have automated programming basically running 24/7. We do have many shows that people create to put on the air. Some people go live into the studio. Some people, like me, record the shows at home in advance, then deliver them to the station manager to put them into the playlist. So we want to be on the air all the time. So the idea is to create daily playlists that'll just fill the air 24/7. If by some chance nobody delivers a show, right, there's still stuff going out. However, when it is time for somebody's regular show and they've delivered it, that show needs to go out on the air at the specified time, superseding the playlist. And if somebody comes into the studio to do it live, they just need to be able to dial down the playlist and do their show on top of it. That's probably easy. We also have to have station IDs going out at the top of every hour and also the bottom of every hour, just for symmetry, I suppose. The timing of those has to be very particular. During the playlists, we still want to be putting out underwriter mentions, sponsor mentions. We don't do ads, but we have underwriters and sponsors, so we give mentions to them at various times during the hour, more informal jingles or information about the station or a public service announcement, whatever it is. Those need to go out too, but the timing of those can be a little bit more flexible. So in RadioBoss, there's playlists and there's event schedulers. What I've learned is that items that you need to trigger at a very particular time, like station IDs at the top of the hour, the best thing to do at that is to put those as explicit events in the event scheduler, because then you can say this thing needs to go at the top of every hour, every day of the week, and at worst, it can wait like 5 or 10 seconds for something else to finish before it gets put in. Otherwise, it's got to supersede what's already being played. And then shows would also be put in as events so that right after that station ID, then whatever show needs to be played can go. Okay. Otherwise, we have playlists, and just for my experimenting, I broke the 24 hours up into 3 8-hour periods where I have a slightly different mix of music going out during those 8 hours. And so within the event scheduler, I need to trigger an event one day that creates the playlists for the next day. And then on that next day, there are events that call up and play those playlists at midnight, 8 a.m., and 4 p.m., thus filling up the whole day. So the event scheduler is the thing that drives all of that. You can add to the event scheduler a whole bunch of different things, a whole bunch of different items. So you just click add. If you just want to play a track or a file name, you can go select it. There's a little button here for the wizard, which gives you a description of all the other things that you can do, such as generate a playlist. Okay, so that's what the last 2 videos were setting up, was the station IDs at the top of every hour and using that generate playlist to automatically generate playlists for the next day. Now you can see in my event scheduler that I have 3 different commands to generate the daily playlists for the following day. You can actually create a multiple event action. That's the button right here. So I could probably just lump all three of those playlist commands into one multiple event action and have that trigger and have all three events generated. But, I kind of like seeing the three individual playlists getting generated one at a time in my list, just for peace of mind that they're all ready to go. Okay. Again, as a reminder, very quickly here, in order to generate a playlist, you have to have created presets, which is a bundle of categories of things that need to be played and the rotation in which you want them to be played, and then for any particular playlist, what the total duration of time you want the playlist to be. For me, these are each 8 hours long. And so if I create a half-hour playlist that alternates 10 minutes of music, a couple of jingles or spots, another 10 minutes of music, etc., to fill up 30 minutes, I need that to be looped through 16 times to fill up 8 hours of programming. The way you get all that started is to go to your Playlist Generator Pro, which is a manual way to create playlists. And you have to visit it at least once, even if you're going to turn the process over to the more automated triggers in the event scheduler, because you need to create your presets. So in the last video, I showed this in detail, but again, just to recap, I have 3 presets, one for midnight to 8 a.m., then 8 to 4 p.m., and then 4 p.m. to midnight. And each one of these is just a collection of categories. And the categories aren't necessarily tied to the particular preset. This is just the categories that you have. I could add another category to this list if I wanted to, but I've got my jingles, sweepers, and sponsor mentions, which are just going to happen one item at a time, and then I also have blocks of music that are 10 minutes a piece that the playlist generator will go to where I tell it, gather some files and make a 10-minute section of music. And then I use these arrows to put any categories that I want to over here in a rotation. And my rotation here is 10 minutes of easy listening music, then a jingle, then 10 minutes of rock, a couple of other, little station things, sponsor mentions, and then another 10 minutes of rock. This is my mix of music from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's a half an hour rotation, and my total playlist length that I ask for down here is 8 hours. And so if I were to click generate, that would crank out a playlist file that has 8 hours of stuff in it, which could then be loaded into the outgoing playlists on the stream. Okay, having generated those presets, you can, if I use this generate, okay, it's actually doing it now, which I didn't really need it to do, but once it's done, it would give me the choice of either sending that playlist to the player so it would go immediately on the air, or saving it to a file. We would want to save our playlist to a file, because then we can come back here to the event scheduler and create events. I'm going to edit one now that will use the save to a file playlist command to create files called playlist A, or B or C in my case, with wildcards in them, $YYYY, $MM, $DD. You can probably guess. Those are going to be year, month, and day. And those are loaded in with the year, month, and day that this action is taking place. So when this playlist generation command in the event schedule triggers later tonight at 8 something p.m. for tomorrow, the data that's going to be loaded into the file name will be, right now it's December 20th, so 2022-12-20. Except then I have this +1D, which is going to increment the day counter by 1, and it would actually end up being 2022-12-21. It would create that playlist file, and then that playlist file would just sit there. Again, details in the previous video about various settings and things like that I've been playing with and learning about. Maybe correctly, maybe not, we'll find out. But the last thing I wanted to discuss how to set up is then, given that we know how to create those playlist files, video number 2, now we need to call them up. Okay, so that's what these events are for. So I already have a few in my event scheduler set up, but if I didn't have them, I could create a brand new one by clicking Add, going to the wizard, and keeping this top option highlighted, which is Play a Track or Playlist. And it would ask me with a browser, where do you want to find this playlist file? And I could select that playlist. Okay. Once you set this up with any one playlist, then you can just edit the instance that you've already made and, for example, put the wildcards back into the file name. So this particular command for playing a playlist, let's see if I can get this to pop up, is just referencing a playlist file. The playlists end by default with extension M3U8. I don't know what it means, but I do know it's a text file, so you could actually edit it manually if you needed to. But in this command here, it's got the wildcards in there. So it's going to go to my WVLP/RadioBoss/playlists folder, and this command, which is going to execute at 12:10 and 10 seconds a.m. Tomorrow, it's actually set to trigger every day. See that? Triggers every day, 10 seconds past midnight. That 10 seconds is to give time for the station ID to have played and completed. It's going to go to that directory and look for the file name with, again, the wildcards here. We'll make it look for 2022-12- and since this would be executing like tomorrow's for me, would be executing on the 21st, so it would look for 2022-12-21. And hopefully that file would be there because on the 20th, the event that created the playlist would have run. I would have used these wildcards to create the file name, and I would have used the +1 increment on the day so that when the file gets created on the 20th, the number 21 is actually put into the file name. So this command should be able to find it. I've given this event a clever name, Play Daily Playlist A. Again, it triggers just after midnight every day of the week. Nothing gets repeated. What's the maximum time to wait in the queue? I'll give it 30 seconds in case maybe the station ID still happens to be playing or something. But otherwise it'll play right away. Enabled event to make sure that it actually runs. Remove the previous schedule from the playlist because it's done, get it out of here. And also I've selected clear playlist because these playlists I ask for 8 hours at a time, but there's a finite number of music tracks to pick from. And so it's not going to construct exactly 8 hours on the nose. And in fact, I've started asking for playlists to actually come out at like 8 hours and 10 minutes just to make sure that it doesn't come up at like 7 hours, 55 minutes, and suddenly there's 5 minutes of dead air. So given that the previous playlist that would have been asked for 8 hours and change, what this is going to do is go ahead and clear that out and then start this playlist in its place at, this precise time or as close as we can get to it. That means that the last song in that previous playlist is probably will probably have been faded out before it completed because that station ID needed to trigger pretty much exactly at the top of the hour. So it could be that 3 times a day a song fades out before it's done to make room for the station ID event and then this new playlist to fire up. But it's automated programming, right? So stuff like that's probably going to happen anyway. And if you're really worried about it, you can take a playlist and go manually tinker with it to get it as close to that 8-hour mark as you want. Okay, but I've made 3 of these. One that fires up at 10 seconds after midnight, one that fires up at 10 seconds after 8, and one that fires up at 10 seconds after 4. You can see here that the only thing that's changed is I've changed playlist A to playlist B or C, and I've changed the time at which it's triggering, and I've edited my task name over here. If I wanted to trim my playlists down to 6 hours instead of 8 so that there's 4 of these per day, I wouldn't have to go start from scratch. I could use this Save as New button down here at the bottom, save this particular event instance as a new event over in the scheduler, edit this to like playlist D, change the file name search here to playlist D, change the times of all of these then to 6-hour windows instead of 8-hour windows, but you can keep adding events as those go along. And then if there are particular shows to be played, we would do that. Let's say I have a show that needs to go at 8 p.m. On Wednesday night. Okay, so I could just add a new event. What do I want to do? I want to play a track. The show file, the MP3 file, would be saved as a track. Where am I going to get it? Let's see. Do I have? Yeah, here we go. Here's some shows. I could pick a show file. Now these shows, because I haven't prepped this in advance, they're not written in the like a template format with the year, month, and day. But let's just say I'm going to play our jazz show that's happens to be saved in this file. I need to send it off at 8 p.m. on Wednesday night only. So I'm going to take out all the weekdays and put Wednesday in, go away Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Probably would say, let this one go 10 seconds later again to make room for that station ID, because the station ID probably isn't built into the show. I don't want this to repeat every 30 minutes. I don't want it to wait very long in the queue, because it's a show. It needs to start when it needs to start. And what I would do here, because this show needs to supersede that 8-hour automated playlist, I don't want that playlist to stop, because we don't want the show to freak out and suddenly there's dead air. So the playlist wants to keep going in the background. And so this item down here lets this show triggered as an event to overlay that playlist. And I would just set the playlist down to very low levels. And so at 8 o'clock, a station ID will have triggered from a different event. Then this show file, which is hopefully an hour long, will play just after that. The automated programming will be faded down in the background so that this show can complete. And then when this show is done, that playlist would go back up to its normal levels and the automated programming would keep running. Or if there's another show at the next hour, that would take over. Okay. That's one thing I'm still going to have to investigate, is if I have shows that are back to back. So one ends, station ID, another one begins. How can I arrange those three events so that one show ends and then like the background playlist comes up for 20 seconds, then fades out again for the station ID, and then that fades out, and then maybe the playlist that's automated sneaks back in for a few more seconds before the new show triggers? That is still up in the air as to how that's going to happen. That could be that that's a job for one of these multiple event actions that could be previous show, station ID, next show, and have those all trigger one after the other with the playlist suppressed in the background the whole entire time. That's what I'm going to need to figure out next. So that might be video number 4. But at this point, with a few irregularities, we got 24/7 automated programming. We got station IDs at the top of the hour. We got playlists firing up every 8 hours and being automatically generated day after day after day. We have the ability to turn on show files any time of the day we want to. And so those, as long as the hosts are providing the files and the file names are properly set up so that they can be found with the wildcards, those are going to get triggered at the top of the hours where they're supposed to go. So at this point, we got a radio station with some fine tuning to be figured out. But otherwise, hey, you know, we're a nonprofit station in a small town. So if it's not, you know, like high quality WGN type of programming control, maybe we have to live with it. Okay, so if you were watching this, I hoped that helped you out a little bit too, but just having talked through it myself, like right there, I came up with what I'm probably going to have to figure out next, just sort of by stream of consciousness. So there might very well be a 4th video coming up with multiple event actions to see if there's a string of shows, just one after the other, after the other, after the other, and there's no need for the automated programming in the background. Can they all be built into a single event? But of course, the problem there is going to be, again, thinking out loud. If like I have 4 shows that have to run sequentially and one of them comes in at like 52 minutes long, we do need the background playlist to fade back up. So we probably don't want that show to the station ID to the next show all as one compressed event, right? So I don't know. If you come back and see a 4th video, maybe I figured something out.